Here are the topics that will be covered in the election process revision videos. This particular video is going to focus on the invisible primary.
The first stage of the presidential election is the invisible primary. Unlike many democracies in which the political parties choose candidates themselves, in the US, candidates are chosen by voters. But why is it called invisible? Well, it's because these events take place before the official stage, which is the primaries, and there is very little to see at this stage. Therefore, it is often referred to as the invisible primary. Let's have a look into what happens at an invisible primary. The function of an invisible primary is for candidates to announce that they are running for president. This can be up to a year before the primaries and caucuses begin. This is where support will be demonstrated through opinion polls to get a good idea of who is going to be the frontrunner for each party. The key question to think about when talking about invisible primaries is why do people announce so far in advance of the primaries and caucuses? Well, it's all about getting your name out there and getting recognition and money. Winning here often leads to winning the party presidential nomination. For example, Senator Ted Cruz made his announcement for the Republican candidacy over 10 months before the Iowa caucus in 2016. Another function of the invisible primary is getting your name mentioned in the press and receiving national exposure. Newspapers such as the Washington Post and the New York Times or Times Magazine are the ones that candidates are particularly serious about, and they often try to get in-depth interviews with them. There is also the possibility of serious political television programs doing a segment on the candidate, such as Face the Nation on CBS or News Hour on PBS. This is important as coverage brings support, which brings money, which brings about campaigns and advertisements, which brings about more money, which then brings about more coverage and more support. So it's an ever ongoing cycle.
Not all of the invisible primary is invisible, as some formal events do occur. There are a number of debates between candidates. This is important as it demonstrates very early on the ability that they have. A good example of this would be the Republican Rick Perry in the 2011 debate, where he could not recall the 3 federal executive departments he would close down if he won. He had to pull out after finishing 6th in the New Hampshire primary with less than 1% of the vote. Finally, the last function of an invisible primary is correlations and frontrunners. Over the many election cycles, it has been important to end the invisible primary as the frontrunner based on opinion polls. Generally, whichever candidate was leading in the polls just before the primaries and caucuses began is usually named as the nominee for each party. For example, in 2016, Clinton enjoyed a 14-point lead over Bernie Sanders, and Trump enjoyed a 16-point lead over Ted Cruz. This is important as it doesn't always predict what is going to happen. At the end of the 2007-2008 invisible primary, Clinton held a 15-point lead over the successful candidate Barack Obama. Furthermore, being a frontrunner appears to be more important in one party than it is to another.